Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2021 Week 8 Fantasy Football Rankings. Breakdown by position. Stardom, Sid'em, the debate. We got it all for you. Hit the description if you want to jump to any particular position. If you're looking for the rankings list, they are also down in the description. Remember to smash the like button to the episode. And please subscribe to Mayo Media Network on YouTube. We're still in the push for 30,000 subs. I thought we'd be there by now, but apparently October hits and it's like, woo, we flatline in terms of new subs. We need to get up to 30K. Let's go, okay? Thank you very much if you haven't done it, and thank you already if you have already done it. The Listeners League link for DraftKings is now live. Didn't fill by 18 people last week. They threatened to make it smaller. I said, no, give us another week. So reserve your spot right now. $15 to play, 3 max entry, no rake, thus making it the best tournament on DraftKings. Link in the description. Shockingly enough, as is the newsletter link, where if you want to get the Spread Pick show early on a Tuesday night, plus all of the other game info and research for the week, go subscribe to that right now. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com is on the line, as he is every single Tuesday afternoon. What's happening, my man?
What's going on? Yeah, I almost did your show in I had my Halloween costume for my show. It was Gizmo Duck from DuckTales, but I couldn't do another hour of trying to look through that mask. So sorry you don't get to see it.
Well, that's tough. I mean, is this how? I guess this would be Halloween week, wouldn't it? I didn't even think about that. I had planned everything for next
because it's Sunday.
Week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that really throws a wrench into my plans.
It does, because if you do anything Monday or Tuesday, it's late.
Yeah, it's just weird at that point. Huh. Well, now I don't know what to do. I have another show to film later today. I don't have a costume. I have to wear one of my kids' costume. I got them like a dragon costume that doesn't fit them. Maybe it can fit me. I don't know. It looks really weird. Probably too shiny with the lights.
That was part of the reason too. Is like it wasn't actually that shiny. It's whoever made this mask. It was just like blurry to see through. Like, why would you make the plastic blurry if kids are trying to? Well, I joked about it during the show. It's like kids are going to be walking into cars and stuff. Like, you're not going to see the candy that gets put in the bag. And when I took it off, it was like going from an old school like the tube television to 4K. Like, I can see clearly now.
It's no better than when we were kids and they had that like Superman mask or all the other masks that had like the little slits for the nose, and then they would get really sweaty because it was too tight. Then they had that like elastic that was way too tight around your back and it would cut in behind the.
Keep talking. I'll bring it back. Hold on. No, just keep talking. I'll go get it.
I suppose I'll continue. Jake apparently has kept all of these throughout eternity. If there's one thing that Jake doesn't mind at all, it's that having a mask that's way too tight on his sweaty nose. Despite the fact that it's cold out.
Look, the little elastic in the back to hold it. See? The little I'll even show you how it was. Although I have my hat on, so it'll be kind of tough. But it was like this.
I mean, you could double that.
This is blurry.
Yeah, but you could double that as like a 1987 like ski goggles mask, because that's kind of what it looks like. If you made it like a bit brighter orange, where like the glass is, you'd be good to go.
See how it blurs my face? Oh, I forgot about those. I actually had a pair of those ski goggles when I used to snowboard. And why would you make it that blurry? Like, it's so freaking blurry.
No, you need the thing that I used to use on my hockey mask when I was growing up. You just put the spray on, you wipe it off, it doesn't fog, everything's clean, and then you would be good to go. Running backs for week 8 at the very top. Derrick Henry, no surprise, he's playing. And he's Derrick Henry with everything that he is doing right now. So he is number 1. Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, who is expected to return this week. No Kareem Hunt. Darrell Henderson and James Robinson inside the top 10. You said you had a problem with one of the rankings. I'm guessing it's Alvin Kamara at number 11.
It wasn't actually even the running back position, but yes, I would have Kamara higher for 2 reasons. Look, Tampa Bay is still top 10 against the run. They aren't what they were last year. We also just saw with Khalil Herbert in that mess of the Bears offense. And granted, the Bears offensive line is pretty good, but so is the New Orleans offensive line. And if we're going to get any kind of repeat, and I don't expect it to be that level, I don't expect Alvin Kamara to be the leader in targets, yards, and receptions receiving. But the Saints, Sean Payton, clearly woke up and said, hey, let's stop not using Kamara in the passing game. That's really what it comes down to. It's just a volume standpoint. I wouldn't sit here and say Kamara should be number 2 behind Henry because it is still Tampa Bay, but he's game script independent, whether it's a slog fest of a game like we just saw, or where they're getting blown out, or whether they're winning, because Kamara's their only legitimate weapon at this point, with everybody that's also hurt in that backfield. Between now as Zigbo's the backup, like Dwayne Washington didn't even get involved that much. Ty Montgomery was seeing some time at running back because they got Traquan Smith back. It's Kamara and nobody else. So I'd probably stop at Swift, putting him over Swift, mostly because I love what we just saw about Swift. Well, you and I talked about last week's, and I had a hesitancy about Swift because all of his production was coming in the fourth quarter. And that's another situation. They finally woke up and said, hey, maybe we use DeAndre Swift in the first 3 quarters. And they did right out of the gate. If you told me that was going to guarantee go forward with, then I would say just keep DeAndre Swift right there. But for this week, I'd still play Kamara over Swift. We're nitpicking RB1s, but I do have quite a few spots I'd move Kamara up.
I just feel like we're now just banking on that he needs to do everything through the receiving game, because even against Seattle, it's not like he had a ton of rushes for absolutely nothing. That didn't really turn out well for him, but it was all due to the receiving game and breaking the one big one, and that's really hard to bank on. And then you have Andres, don't call me Amanda. Pete looks like he tore his bicep or pec or something like that, so he's going to be out, so that's a downgrade to the offensive line. And I think Tampa's smart enough to know, it's like, oh, we have one thing in this game that we have to do: stop Alvin Kamara, and we're going to win by 500 points, because they can't do anything else.
It should be, but we're also talking about, even before this game, you said it has to do it in the passing game, and I don't necessarily agree with that, because he just had 3 games in a row before this game where he had 120 total yards, 70 of them coming in one game rushing. I think close to 100 of them coming rushing one game, and another game where it's more balanced. I think it was like 70 receiving, but it's 3 games in a row of 120 yards, because he is. And yes, we say that all the time, that teams are smart enough and teams are going to go out there, and it's the Belichick, and that's why I say the whole Belichick is it's confirmation bias with Belichick, because everybody's like, oh, he always takes away the best weapons. Not that 31 other teams don't try to do the exact same thing and don't try to take away a team's best weapon. But if you're going to give me 20 plus touches of Kamara, that's just all it comes down to. I just don't know that Swift is guaranteed to see 20 again. So I don't disagree with anything you said. I would just go Kamara over all those 6 guys in front of him.
I think I like having him hang out at number 11 for the moment. I just do worry about the potential upside for him in this game with Tampa. That everything that you've talked about just seems like what he has to do to get to his like median floor when it comes down to it. I'll run the Sims, and you can go to runthesims.com and you can use code RTS there right now on the monthly membership to get 25% off, and run the slate 10,000 times, and you can adjust your own projections. I want to see what he comes out as in my second run, because he was pretty low in my first one around, and I manually put him up inside my rankings. It's not like I'm going to bench Alvin Kamara, because everyone knows that's how I do my rankings. It's when I start this guy over this guy. It's not a projections list. You can get those anywhere. When you need bad advice in terms of who I would play, you come to my rankings. That's what we do. So I got Kamara at number 11, Mixon, and then Aaron Jones, Cordero Patterson, Darrell Williams, Leonard Fournette, Khalil Herbert, Elijah Mitchell, Devontae Booker, and Damian Harris. I think that after Kamara, you have this like Mixon, Aaron Jones, and hell, Cordero Patterson's zone. Darrell Williams, Leonard Fournette. I guess you could throw Herbert and Elijah Mitchell and Booker into that mix too. Is they're all essential? Harris isn't a full-time guy though, is the thing.
He's close enough.
I do think he's pretty game script dependent, that if they get down in this game against the Chargers, in a game where they are not favored, we're just going to see a lot more Brendan Bolden like we've been seeing in these games.
I don't think it's enough to take him out of this conversation, because Damian Harris is used in the passing game, and he doesn't completely lose all of it. It's not a James Conner, Chase Edmonds situation split. Like, they almost have separate roles completely. Even you could look up, and I'm trying to think, I'm looking at anybody in front of him on this list that might be in a similar situation where you say, okay, if it's purely passing, it's just the other guy instead. You'd have to go further down. You'd have to go into more like the Zach Moss, Devin Singletary situation. Although that kind of went sideways in that game before the bye week anyway, because Singletary was just out there to start. But all that being said, is Damian Harris is used in the passing game. This is something we talked about in the preseason, is the fact that he has 3-down ability. And this is something that, Belichick hasn't had for many years. You have to go back to like Latavius Murray, Corey Dillon, Robert Edwards days for that. But he has used somebody in that fashion before. Obviously, that 50 to terrible slaughtering game, you can't take too much out of it for Bolden and JJ Taylor. And here's the thing, and I mentioned this on my show, Pat, is I would be concerned about Stevenson if you had him, but I would also not be shocked if Stevenson came out and was all of a sudden the number 2 again this week for 2 reasons. Not only is it Belichick, but I keep referencing the podcast I did with D'Angelo Williams where he brought up and said, when you go through practices, this is something that you don't know unless you're a player. And this is why his opinion in this is more important than ours, is he said things happen during the week in practice. And sometimes, especially at running back, and especially if you're a rookie running back, and you miss plays and you miss assignments and you miss a pass block and you just screw up 2 or 3 times in one day. You know, it happens to everybody, but especially at running back and especially for rookies. You get benched. Like sometimes the coach sends you a message and says, you're out this week, or, you know, you fall down the depth chart for 1 week. You got to get your crap together. So I say that to say this. I don't think we're definitively in the situation where we can say 100% Brandon Bolden is now James White. I would bet on it, but I would have to get plus money to use the betting lingo. I don't think it would be a shock. So I would have Damian Harris higher, also because the Chargers are one of the most favorable running back matchups. I know that you said it could get out of hand, and I don't disagree with that, but I would definitely play him over Devontae Booker. You talk about a game that could get out of hand. We just saw what happened to Booker 2 weeks ago. And I'd probably play him over Herbert, but I would go Mitchell over Herbert too.
I just like where Herbert's coming in right now. I was really surprised that he continued to touch the ball as often against the Bucs with Damian Williams.
Here's my one hesitant. Sorry.
What is it?
I know you hate to be cut off. Sorry. I was just sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
Anyway, it already happened. I'm not sure that Damian Williams just wasn't 100% coming back from COVID. And I'm not saying that he's going to take the lead. And again, it's just pure speculation. I have no reports. This is just me sitting here as like, again, similar to the Patriots situation, I 100% agree with you and everybody. I love what we're seeing from Herbert. I was one of the biggest Herbert fans in my draft profile when coming out of college. That being said, I don't know that one game tells us Damian Williams is officially out of the equation. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, I'm going to try to bank on Herbert still being the guy for the Bears right now. And the thing with Harris is, like, yes, he's involved in the receiving game, kind of. He's averaging fewer than 2 catches a game. It's like 1.5. And someone like Devontae Booker is averaging 3 catches a game over the past 3 since he's become the starter. And he's touching the ball like guaranteed 17, 18 times a game.
Again, not wrong. This is a close-knit group, and when I run my projections and do my rankings, I guarantee that you mentioned Aaron Jones. I think starting at probably Cordell Patterson all the way even into the Chuba Hubbard range. So that's what, 14 to 24? I'm probably expecting 1.5, 2 points difference in projections. So this is just how tight this group gets. It's similar to wide receiver 3s.
I am pretty ecstatic that the Packers are playing on Thursday night and not on Sunday, because I would be the guy looking at the board on Sunday with Aaron Jones as one of the most expensive running backs on DraftKings and being like, well, no one's playing him. I'll play Aaron Jones. It's going to be the 4-touchdown game. Then I'll have like 2 points. Like, theoretically, this should be a great spot for him. The rankings are acting like there is no Devontae Adams this week, although as we record this, he has not officially been ruled out on the COVID list. He is very unlikely to play at this point, though. That's why he is not in the rankings. So with someone like Aaron Jones, like, could he be more involved in the receiving game? Yeah, absolutely. Could he not? Sure. I have such a bad vibe about their backfield that it's worse than it was last year. Because at least last year, if Aaron Jones didn't have a big game, like A.J. Dillon was really good. Now it's just like they can both be bad. I don't know what's going on.
And this is why I have 0 Aaron Jones and why everybody told me I hated Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones on a per-touch basis. I don't like Aaron Jones on the Packers. You switch roles and put Aaron Jones on half the other teams in the NFL, and I would consistently have him as a top 10 running back and potentially top 5. The funny thing is, you mentioned, he's already hit a career high in receiving touchdowns. He's always been touchdown reliant. He ran for around 1,100 yards each of the past 2 seasons. It's the touchdowns that carried him to a top 5 finish, on top of the fact you also have the attrition of running backs that fell out due to injury. So, most years, if everybody stayed healthy, which that never happens, I'm not saying that's ever going to happen, but if everybody stayed healthy, he probably still finishes his RB 9, 10, 11, somewhere around there. Look at the points per game. And it's touchdown reliant. I drew this comparison and people told me I was stupid, but I said he's essentially the Goodwill Fuller of running backs. You might get the 3-touchdown game that you're talking about, and you might get 6 points. That's just what you just do that. If you invested in Aaron Jones, you had to know that's what you were getting, especially with A.J. Dillon this year. I agree. It should be a smash spot. And Arizona is even more favorable at times against the run, especially after the contact. They're a great team to run on. And if you look at Aaron Jones in this game with no Devontae Adams, it should be. And he's already being used in the passing game. But yeah, there is the hesitancy of it could just be. He's got a lower floor than Cordero Patterson behind him. He's got a lower floor than Leonard Fournette, unless Bruce Arians, after 7 weeks of trusting Leonard Fournette, all of a sudden throws us a curveball. He honestly probably has a lower floor than Khalil Herbert at this point. But you play Aaron Jones because he can also score 40 points.
Yeah, his range of outcomes is just so much across the board, but that high end is the super high end. I actually took the baseline projections from Run the Sims and just ran them for this slate 10,000 times while we were talking to look at who the highest projected running back of the week is. Do you know who it is? By 3 points.
Aaron Jones?
No, it's it's Alvin Kamara.
Oh, so there you go. Do you know he's actually number 1 this year? He's actually over Derrick Henry. As great as Derrick in half-point PPR.
Really? That doesn't sound right.
I checked because
you're,
I was pulling.
You're fake news.
Am I?
I think so. I feel like
he has
coming
one fewer game.
Yeah, but coming into the game,
you're right.
Derrick Henry was outscoring every other running back by 60 points.
No. I was going to say this. What happened? The site that I pulled up defaulted to 2020 for some reason. I don't know why. I didn't see the date at the top. Yeah, it is. He's actually 4. So there you go.
I mean, crushing my preseason rank of Alvin Kamara. I guess I had him at number 5. I think. No, I had him at number 4.
Did you?
I went McCaffrey, Cook,
Barkley,
Henry.
Cook.
No, I had Barkley at number 11. I wasn't drafting
Barkley.
Barkley.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, so I had McCaffrey, great pick. McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, Kamara. So yeah, getting close. Too bad CMC. CMC will come back and still be the per game leader for the season once we look at back, but he'll only have played 5 games. It'll be great.
I don't know. He's got to get his 24.5. What does CMC have right now? Probably through his game.
Well, he had the injury, so that one's really going to hurt him. But I feel like that's up where he was around. He was at
22.7.
Yeah,
in the 2 games before getting hurt. So he's still that. But I'm saying that's still almost 2 points behind Henry.
Yeah, McCaffrey will be good to get that back. Anyway, let's get to the rest of the rankings. You're probably playing all of these guys inside the top 20. I actually think, when I say the cutoff, I think that Harris is different than Booker by a little hair. I think that Harris has more in common with the next guys down this list, whether it be Connor and Edmonds, who I have at 21 and 22, Antonio Gibson, Chuba Hubbard. Alex Collins at number 25 was not a good game, obviously, on Monday night, but he is the guy in that backfield, even with Rashad Penny coming back. And now they get Jacksonville. That's much easier. So the first one is the waiver wire pickup of the week, Kenneth Gainwell. I have it number 26. I don't even know if he's going to have more fantasy points than Boston Scott. So how high can I really rank the guy?
There you go. And honestly, unless Jordan Howard gets activated, I would start Boston Scott over Kenneth Gainwell, because here's the issue. Chris and I actually talked about it on the show. Hey, Chris is the Eagles guy, and he knows it. And he's not saying anything anybody who follows this team doesn't know. But Kenneth Gainwell hasn't seen the field as much as he should in the passing game this year, and why you're seeing Miles Sanders on some of those, because he's abysmal in pass blocking. It's not even just getting blown up by linebackers and defensive ends and all that. It's the fact he's not even in the right place at the right time. You're missing assignments. Weekly missing assignments. If they had better options, this would go back to my whole thing with D'Angelo's. They might have just benched him for a game at this point. He is just, they do not trust him, and for good reason. He looks awful. It's essentially Tyson Williams' situation. You can look explosive. You can look great on your per plays. The difference is the Ravens said, screw it, you're being benched because we have other options. The Eagles really haven't. So I would start Boston Scott over him, because Boston Scott is the goal line runner, and he's also the lead runner, and he's also down on passing downs. And I'm not saying the split's going to be 70-30, but Boston Scott is the lead, as weird as it sounds, because you look at Boston Scott and you look at his talent, you look at his play, and you say, oh, Boston Scott's a nice complementary piece as a 40% of a 60-40 split. But in this situation, I actually think Boston Scott is the 60-40 split. He's on the 60 side with Gainwell, because the Eagles, rightfully so, don't trust Gainwell. Now, can Gainwell turn his plays into more? Arguably, sure. But I would go Scott over Gainwell, although I would not like to really start either one of them. I'm going down your ranks, and even though Gaskin's facing Buffalo, the Malcolm Brown injury would make me trust Gaskin over both of them, and I think that's right. I would almost go Gaskin and then Scott, Gainwell, Bolden if it was my rankings.
Well, if I'm going to boost Scott up above Bolden, I think I'm going to put Gainwell one spot behind Bolden then, instead of having them completely back-to-back. I'll go Scott one spot ahead of Brandon Bolden at number 30. That'll make him number 31 now. and that will make Kenneth Gainwell number 33 is the way that I want to play it. Because I'm with you on Myles Gaskin. I think that he has a decent floor in this game because of the receiving. With no Malcolm Brown being around, maybe they end up turning to Salvon Ahmed a little bit more. Maybe Patrick, our Laird and Savior, ends up getting back involved again. But it just seems like in these games where they're behind and Gaskin's going to be on the field, it's going to be dump-off city, especially with how bad the Dolphins' offensive line and how good the pass rush has been for the Bills so far. It feels like Jalen Waddle, short passes, Myles Gaskin, short passes, and not a lot of points for the Dolphins. So I don't really know. He'd have to break one in order to turn out a really good game, but at the same time, his floor is stabilized a little bit. Are you in on J.D. McKissic being like, would you start J.D. McKissic over Antonio Gibson at this point? Because I wouldn't yet, but it's getting there.
It's getting close. Hey, it was out-snapped. It was there. Like, I had J.D. McKissic in a DraftKings lineup last week because I was looking for the savings and plugged it in for the fact because each week, and I even say the good DraftKings play is because I know we're talking seasonal, but to bring this into the conversation, the upside of McKissic for seasonal and DraftKings is similar. It's the fact that, look, you're getting a flex running back, and even though the snaps are different, Gibson out-touches him. But we know any given week, there's a risk Gibson just leaves and never comes back in that game. And then that's the upside there because now Gibson's the guy. And if Gibson's getting 80% of a work, even if it's 80% only in the second half, now you're talking about McKissic potentially being top 20. So, at 5,100, still a great play. And seasonal, still a great play in this range. And if you're talking about the fact that he's here with Melvin Gordon and Alex Collins and Zach Moss, his ceiling's just as high, but a different ceiling. His ceiling is high because of the touches potential, and their upside is really baked into hopefully getting a touchdown. So I'm with you. Again, I would not start him over Gibson yet, but I got to tell you, Washington loses this week, and that might even be the cutoff point. It might take one more game after that. I wouldn't be surprised if they shut Gibson down. Inside Injuries keep saying the only way to heal this injury is you need to rest. You cannot play through this kind of injury. It's never going to heal.
And you could always make it a whole lot worse for yourself, too. Then you actually have to deal with the ramifications of this going into next year, which I'm sure that they don't want to do because this year, an absolute write-off for the Washington football team at this point. Does this mean you've picked up Jared Patterson where you need to?
Yes. Yes, where I could.
Yeah.
Anywhere I have a free roster spot, I'd pick him up. We talk about backups all the time, and something I don't know your feelings on it, but we talk about backups in a whole when drafting. But in season, a lot of times people are like, should I drop Carlos Hyde for Samaje Perine? And I'm like, okay, Perine looks a little bit better. But when you're talking backups or backups and like, yeah, one looks a little bit better on a better team, but it's kind of like, it's just really whoever gets hurt first. Mike Davis is essentially a high-end backup now at this point. He's not somebody like, yeah, I know. But that being said, if Cordell Patterson got hurt, I would like Mike Davis more than Samaje Perine, even though Perine's been better than Mike Davis has been. So I say all that to say this is, Perine kind of is starting to creep up towards like not quite Tony Pollard because Pollard has standalone value and not Alexander Madison because we know Madison can be an RB1. But he's kind of just right in that next group now where he's a priority next man up because the risk is so high that he's basically with Perine and with Sony Michel. The running backs in front of him are such an injury risk that those would be the ones I prioritized.
Michael Carter, I have at number 27 right now against the Bengals. I don't know the health status of Tevin Coleman. He is not in the rankings. He did not play in week number 7. Ty Johnson left the game in week 7, but I do have him in the rankings. If both those guys are out, Michael Carter could be kind of sneaky this week. I would probably bump him up to, it wouldn't be that far. I'd probably go from 27 to 25. I'll give you a coin flip between him and Chuba Hubbard at that point.
Yeah, I think I would. I would go higher. I would
it depends on who's playing quarterback. If it's Magic Mike, I'd boost him way up because he's going to catch 14 passes in the game. If it's Flacco,
Joe Flacco he has one of the highest percentage of throwing to running backs. Back when Phillip Rivers, I remember pulling it up that year. Joe Flacco loves to throw to running backs.
But Joe Flacco, who knows what Joe Flacco's like now versus even was he playing for the Jets last year or the year before?
It was the year before. He knows the system, and if he can't throw anymore, I mean, he was never a huge A-dot guy anyway.
Well,
but
he wouldn't necessarily know this system. It's a brand new coaching staff.
No, but he's familiar. There's one of the coaches that he's familiar with and familiar with the style. What the heck is it? I know it's Saleh, but there's somebody underneath Saleh. Anyway, there's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever it is. There's a connection here where Joe Flacco could just step in and he could easily start this week. And I mean, it's Mike White. If you could go for Joe Flacco and Joe Flacco is ready to pick up the playbook. All that being said, no, I'm saying independent of the quarterback, whether it is Mike White or Joe Flacco, I would start Michael Carter over both Arizona running backs, because you just said this is if Ty Johnson's out, because he is going to be the guy. The problem right now is that Ty Johnson's actually more valuable than people want to treat him, because he gets a good amount of passing game work in a weird way, which we don't normally see. He's the passing game option who also gets goal line carries. Now, Michael Carter is not that far behind him in goal line carries. Everybody just thinks it's only Ty Johnson because that's all they remember, is that he's taking it away from Michael Carter. Michael Carter is getting his own share. But if you give that basically 80% of that backfield to Michael Carter, yeah, he needs to be at least 21. To go back to your Damien Harris argument, I might even argue Michael Carter over Damien Harris because of that workload.
It would be difficult to rank him above the Arizona guys because they play on Thursday, and we just won't have that information.
Right.
That I'd rather risk it with the Arizona guys unless it was very clear cut of what was going on in the Jets' backfield. So that's why I said that's why I'd be hesitant to put him up there. So I'd probably move him up at least initially. Yeah, you know what? You're probably right. It would be like a coin flip with Damian Harris because Connor and Edmonds would both be off the board by the time we actually knew. That it's a situation to watch out for. If Chubb can't go, how high is Dearness Johnson?
How high is too high at Dearness Johnson?
Is he top 10?
I think.
Or number 11? Would Kamara go up one spot and Dearness Johnson would be number 11?
14. I know it's the Browns, but I still cannot start Dearness Johnson over Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, James Robinson. I cannot do it. It might be the right call. And, Dearness Johnson could easily replicate what he did last week because it is the Browns but it's also the Steelers this time. And I'm not saying the Steelers are, oh my God, run for the hills, the Buccaneers of last year when it comes to run defense. And there's actually been some games where they haven't looked good. It's been very inconsistent some weeks, and maybe some of that hinges on the health of TJ Watt when he's been out there or not. But what it comes down to is just, it's Dearness Johnson, looks really good. Everybody wants to talk about, oh, he's so disrespected because of his 40 time and all that. But still, there's no way. How could you sit there and tell me he should start over Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, if you're looking right now at the top 5 run defenses in football, it's the Saints, Rams, Steelers, Colts, and Bengals are the top 5. Seahawks, sneakily, number 6 against the run so far this season. Then you got the Browns, Washington, Miami, and Denver. It's really strange. Like Washington, both run defense and in terms of pressure rate on the quarterback, both really good. They just have absolutely no secondary. It's really bizarre.
And that's the weird part about it is I think Washington's defense is one of the biggest surprises this year.
But don't be surprised next year when they're like a top 5 unit again, because they only need like 1 or 2 decent pieces and they're really good again.
And that's the thing is we thought they were just as good with additional pieces from the draft and just, getting people back healthy that they'd be. I made the comparison to the Giants Super Bowl run and said, when you can get that kind of front and that kind of pressure and your 5th option in the defensive line is better than some teams can even have as a starter, you don't need the best secondary in the world. But at this point, you also need a secondary and a linebacking crew that looks like it could just play football, and it hasn't yet this year. So, your statement, honestly, is also a testament to fantasy defenses in general. This is how much changes from year to year, no matter what we think or what we know. Also, they played a little bit better last week, and I wouldn't say, against Denver, the run game, I see where you have the running backs ranked, and I think that's a fair spot, especially because I would rather attack them through the air. And I think they will do that, especially if Jerry Jeudy's back. Yeah,
just looking at, I do have Jerry Jeudy ranked this week, but he's still a game time decision right now. In terms of coverage so far this year, the Lions are the worst. Washington is second worst. Jacksonville, Houston, Chicago, the Jets, the Seahawks, Steelers, Broncos, and Colts are your bottom 10 coverage defense. The Bills are actually the best in coverage. Bills, Cardinals, Titans, Raiders, and Vikings. Raiders, sneaky good D. Did not see that one coming.
Well, that's what we thought. That they're the I almost said it. They're the Washington Footballs. They are the team that is getting pressure after the quarterback and has enough pieces in the secondary and linebacking group to be able to play really good defense because they're getting that pressure and the guys behind them, the back 7, or depending on the formation. But anyway, point being is they're playing well enough that it's creating a good overall defense. So it's basically what we expected Washington to be.
Yeah, Vegas is number 1 in pass rush. Washington is number 2, and you can see just the big discrepancy between those two defenses just because of the secondary right now. Last one, Bills running backs. Moss and Singletary, you brought it up that we were kind of rope-a-dope the last time that we saw the Bills. Is my ranking of Zach Moss too low? Should he be a lot higher, just thinking that they go back to him?
No, because I would play Myles Gaskin over him and not even think twice about that. And that was coming from somebody that yesterday morning, because the news wasn't out while I was doing the podcast with Meanie, is that said, sell high on Gaskin. And then Malcolm Brown goes on IR just an hour later. This is the fun of doing live shows. But, you know, hey, for everybody that's watching this show that also watches that show up there in Canada, if you watched it last night, sorry, but that news wasn't out yet. It's the Zach Moss. Yes, this would be a game where we say, okay, we can trust Zach Moss again. But we also thought we were trusting Zach Moss in the game before the bye, which that game also looked like it should have been a Zach Moss game, and yet Singletary was out there the majority of the time early. Like, Zach Moss wasn't even getting some of his work until the second half. So I don't think it's too high. I would start Gaskin definitively over him. And I don't know where my ranking.
Here's why I would not start him over. I would chance that there is a rebound in this spot for Zach Moss, and all of a sudden he becomes the lead again. If he is the lead, even if it's like a 65-35 split, I'm just playing for touchdowns here. That I think that the touchdown equity of Zach Moss in this game against the Dolphins versus Myles Gaskin on the other side is more valuable in my fantasy lineup. Although it's ripe for 2 points, it's also ripe for like 25 points.
Okay, well, and that's what happens for a lot of people that have to make decisions. If you're talking about RB3s, do you need the floor or the ceiling? So that's really what it comes down to. If you like your team and you just don't want to risk a 2 or potentially a 0, Zach Moss just doesn't even barely get involved, then you play Gaskin. If you're going for your point, the situation for both to hit their ceiling is more likely for Moss, although I don't think Gaskin's ceiling is that far from his because of what you talked about earlier when we were talking about Gaskin. If this game is out of hand and the Bills are up 24-3 in the second quarter, and then all of a sudden Gaskin's walking to 10 targets, you know, that's the kind of upside. But if you talk about running the simulations on Run the Sims, if you ran a simulation 10,000 times, I think you're more likely to hit Moss's ceiling than you are Gaskin's ceiling.
Let's try to find where is Zach Moss right now. Zach Moss, his medium projection. So if we just take the upside, the downside, and everything flat across the board in half-point PPR, his medium projection is 12.1. Myles Gaskin, 12.2.
So there you go.
But I bet you the distribution.
Can you run ceilings?
I can run ceilings. Just give me a second on that. Vibe with me for a second while I look this up. If people haven't signed up for prizepicks.com yet, I think that they should do that right now and use code MMN when you deposit. If you put in $100, they'll give you another $100. You'll have $200. But I want to talk about Thursday night and what to do with the receiving core on this team. Only because if Devontae Adams is out, like, how high does Lazard go? How high does Cobb go? Like, what are we doing with these guys?
Yeah, look, Lazard, we've done this before, and Lazard kind of gives me the feeling of one of those, not Travis Fulgham, but it's the best explanation I can give, because as the Fulgham guy because he's from ODU. So, that's kind of one of those things when you when you watch a team more than anybody else, that's why we trust beat writers for some of these inside information. Told everybody, and I'm saying this I'm setting up the whole argument here, is I was like, go grab Fulgham before everybody else. And I'm saying to like, haha, I told you. I'm saying that to say I also was one of the first people to say, get off of Travis Fulgham, because once defenses treated him as the number 1 wide receiver, that's not a skill set. We've seen what Fulgham is. He's a wide receiver 4 or 5 in the NFL. It's a great story whenever we see a wide receiver do that. I don't think Lazard is of his level. I think Lazard is better than him. I'm just concerned that if there is no Devontae Adams and you're stopping Lazard in the passing game, and your focus is obviously going to be Aaron Jones, but who are you going to stop at wide receiver? You're going to try and stop Lazard, and you're going to say, beat us with Randall Cobb and whoever else might be the actives of the other wide receivers. So I think that Lazard would definitely have to be started in most leagues. Where do you have him at 32? I think that's a good spot for him. I'd probably still go Emmanuel Sanders, Marvin Jones, especially against Seattle. And I would put him in kind of like that Julio Jones, AJ Green conversation, which is still low end wide receiver 3. But I wouldn't go crazy. I wouldn't put him inside the top 20. And I think some people would want to do that.
Interesting. Yeah. I like him outside because I have the same hesitations that you have. I was actually just looking on prizepicks.com to go see where the receiving totals are going to be for these guys. And they're just like, you know what? We're not going to offer them. But I want to get your take on some of these because you need to play one from each side of the game. If you're, I mean, at least one from each side of the game. You can play up to 5. Again, prizepicks.com, code MMN. Kyler Murray, 259.5 passing yards. Doesn't that seem like a crazy low number?
It is for the way that he's playing right now, and you're kind of you're kind of jumping into when you asked earlier. I said I had a problem with one of your rankings. It is Kyler Murray, so we'll save it for when we get to the quarterbacks. But because he is essentially turning into a pass happier quarterback this year, and deservedly so. You know, you bring in AJ Green to the mix, you add Rondell Moore, who is overrated for name value, but when it comes to fantasy, but for real life value, still having that as your 4th wide receiver with Christian Kirk and AJ Green as the 2-3, whichever it might be any given week. DeAndre Hopkins, who's actually seen his target volume come down because they have so many options, and they add Zach Ertz, which, you know, I agree with you, still sell high on Zach Ertz because without that touchdown, you know, he still was only 4th. He was ahead of Rondell Moore, but he's still only 4th in opportunity. So all these weapons, Kyler Murray doesn't have a problem not running anymore because he's turned into a passer. I agree with you. I think that's extremely, extremely low number. I was also looking real quick is that PFF has Alan Lazard likely to line up the most with Alford and Murphy, which are the 2 top. It's a poor and a below average matchup. So that's the big thing too, is it might be a Randall Cobb game. I don't even want to say it because, you know, I don't like the player. Watch it be an Equinemius St. Brown game.
Yeah, they're not getting MVS off IR yet, are they?
He's eligible, but it doesn't sound, if they didn't already start the window, like who was the one that started? Somebody just started their window this week. Oh, Michael Gallup. Didn't even start the window yet, so I don't know. It doesn't seem like it. Not with Thursday.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Yeah, so Zach Moss versus Myles Gaskin. The ceiling projection for Zach Moss is 29.2, where the ceiling projection for Myles Gaskin is like 22.5.
There you go. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, so, I mean, our analysis was right of the situation. I'm just playing for the larger upside, because I do think that they do go back to Moss. I just think that he's the better player over Singletary. This is such an easy matchup for them.
It should. Absolutely.
It better be.
100%.
It better be an easy matchup for them if
better
you're a
be.
Bills fan.
Yeah, you would hope so.
Full wide receiver rankings for the week. Again, you can find all of the rankings down in the description or up on dknation.com. And plus, I'll have the updates in the newsletter. If you subscribe to that, Mayo Media Network's up to the YouTube channel as well. Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase up to number 2. Do you have any idea how good some of my teams are doing? Because I have Jamar Chase everywhere. It's great.
I know the feeling. I only wish I had gotten more of them, and unfortunately, the places where I don't have them are like home leagues and stuff, where people read my stuff.
Yeah,
and bring my rankings to the draft.
Kupp, Chase, Tyreek, Debo, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, McLaurin, Ridley, CeeDee Lamb coming back from bye, DeAndre Hopkins number 10, Keenan Allen back from bye, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I have AJ Brown as out of these rankings right now. If he plays, obviously, I will put him back in and I'll readjust them. Stephen Diggs, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, Adam Thielen. Now, this is so much easier to do than last week when there were 6 good teams on by. Now we have DK Metcalf at number 21. Sterling Shepard. This is saying that Tony is the only Giant that I don't have in the receiving core right now. So no Tony, no Barkley in that offense. So I have Sterling Shepard, number 21, Brendan Cooks, Jalen Waddle, Cortland Sutton with Judy back, Michael Pittman with T.Y. Hilton back, T. Higgins, Robert Woods, Devonta Smith, Jarvis Landry, Chase Claypool. I found like I was rolling really good until we got to Metcalf. I mean, outside of one play, he would have been a disaster last night.
It would have been. This is just what Gino does at quarterback. So I'm going to say I actually do have, I want to move somebody inside your top 10 down to 16.
Justin Jefferson.
Because Calvin Ridley. Really? He is without, look at his per game. And I again, for everybody out there, if you want to tweet me who said it, I love, because I can't remember. I thought it was Ray Murphy. I thought it was Rudy Gamble. Somebody tweeted it out, and I didn't see the tweet enough. Like, I didn't see it fast enough because I was in the middle of a podcast to be able to save it, and I should have. But he pointed out the fact that Calvin Ridley for his career is not great in producing fantasy after the catch. Well, just in producing after the catch, but for fantasy purposes. He's very air yard per target reliant. And what's the problem is because of how defenses are treating him now, as deservedly so, as the only option. Kyle Pitts is helping a little bit, but he's still not doing much after the catch, as he's never done. But now his ADOT and air yards are coming down. And because of that, he's very reliant on how deep Ryan is going to him and reliant on the touchdown. He's not getting 7 for 110. He's not essentially, he's the inverse Keenan Allen. He's the low yards touchdown where Keenan Allen's like, okay, fine, I won't have a big ADOT, but I'll still catch the ball 7 times. Deontay Johnson is by far, I said this all last year. Deontay Johnson would have been a top 10 wide receiver if you just take the games where he didn't exit early. And I know that's a lot to say, but it's true. Even that was with Juju Smith-Schuster last year. I know it's against Cleveland, but I would go Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Stefon Diggs, both. You have no Antonio Brown, so both Buccaneers before Calvin Ridley. And that's where I would stop. And DJ Moore right in that same game with him because there's some concerns with how Darnold's playing. It might even be PJ Walker this week.
No, they said Darnold's going to play.
Okay. I meant like, does he finish the game again?
Yeah.
But
yeah. Okay.
the point being is I don't think we can say Calvin Ridley, similar to Allen Robinson, not even be startable anymore. I don't know that we could say Calvin Ridley is definitively a top 10 anymore.
Okay, I'll move Ridley down. You sold me. Down to number 16 in the rankings, and that boosts everyone up back a spot. So that works out for me. Do you think we'll see Stephen Gilmore this week?
If so,
then that's bad.
That is bad. It is definitely, it is that, because that secondary is already good to begin with. But it could be even worse. But also, like, what is Stephen Gilmore right now? And I just sighed because I'm about to do it again. But to go back to D'Angelo Williams, it was like the conversation of like when Le'Veon Bell came back that year, and everybody remembers that first game. Dalvin Cook, when he came back from his injury, there's a difference between being in game shape and a difference between being in actual NFL shape. Actually, Mike Tomlin was one of the first person who said that to me. I'm name dropping all over the place, but it's these players can be in the best physical specimens you can see, but there's a complete difference in being hit and being out there and running every single play. So yes, it is a concern. Yes, you would knock the concern level up, but is Gilmore out there for 100% of his normal workload? That's all I'm pointing out.
Or is he still good? That's a real question that we have to consider.
That's a question too. Yes. Yeah.
We've seen DBs fall off a cliff much sooner than this. And when was the last time Gilmore played? Like 2 years ago?
And I mean, if the team was really willing to give, for what they got in the trade, and that might just tell you what they think of Gilmore at this point anyway. Contract stuff aside.
Potentially so. All right, so the guys in that 21 through, do you think Sterling Shepard at 21 is too high if Tony doesn't play? Because I feel like he's just going to get every catch there is if he plays.
No, Sterling Shepard is definitely, and even if Tony plays, I wouldn't knock him down that far. Like if Tony plays, I would knock him down.
Would you play Tony or Shepard?
Robert Woods.
Would you play Tony or Shepard?
I'd still play Shepard.
I think I'd play Hunky Tony.
No, because here's the difference. I would play Tony over Shepard barely if Kenny Golladay was out. You have Kenny Golladay in, and that's why I would play Shepard over Tony.
Yeah, we should probably not spend so much time on the Giants
wide
receiving every single week, just because it's useless. Okay. There's one guy that will be all right, and then it'll be like Hunky Tony telling Sterling Shepard to back off, all right? And then he'll have every target there is. He'll just bully Daniel Jones into throwing the ball to him. He might hit him.
See, this is why I told you I still need to do your show. You help boost the mood. This is the stuff that we need. I do have one beef too. Also, it's down to 30. Chase Claypool's way too low.
Why do you think Chase, Juju being out does nothing for Claypool, right?
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't.
It was one bad. Yes, it does. Because if you go back, I already had the same argument with somebody else because I said go buy low on. Here's what. I said go buy low on Claypool everywhere. He said the problem is Ben Roethlisberger's still the quarterback. I said okay, and Ben Roethlisberger was still the quarterback. The 3 previous games where he had a good game in all of them, and 2 of those were with it. One was without Deontay, and one was out Juju Smith-Schuster, and the other one was both. All 3 of them were out there. 3 straight good games, actually one really giant game without one of those guys on the field. If he's one of the top 2 options, it's such a funneled offense through the 2 of them that, yes, you can call me crazy for whatever you want. I would start Claypool. And I even wish T. Higgins was higher in your rankings, but I would play Claypool. Claypool and Higgins are in the same conversation for me.
At this point, I'd rather take the guy who's attached to Joe Burrow and the one who is seeing
I just said the same conversation.
Who saw a massive amount of air yards last week and just couldn't convert on them. I would be, listen, T. Higgins. That's a tricky game because there's a chance that the Bengals get up by too much, and then it's just like Samaje Perine and Auden Tate in the game. Because we've seen the Bengals' willingness to pull their starters so they don't get hurt at the end. We've seen it each of the past 2 weeks. With Claypool, here's my biggest issue. It's twofold for this week against the Browns in particular. One, the Browns' defense, especially in the secondary, pretty good. The pass rush for the Browns, exceptionally good. And what can't Pittsburgh do? They cannot block for poor Ben Roethlisberger. And it feels to me like if Claypool is going to have one of these big games, he's going to have to catch the ball down the field. And I just don't think he's going to have enough time to get those routes to develop. It's going to be Deontay Johnson and Pat Firemouth. And those are going to, and Najee's going to have like 38 catches. And like, it's a tough matchup to me for Chase Claypool and what his skill set brings to the table.
Okay. It's a fair argument. That's why I said the same conversation at T. Higgins, who's only at 26. What I was going to bring in about T. Higgins is you do have Judy in your rankings. For me, if I'm starting players, it would be Higgins, Claypool, Sutton, and I love Sutton. You know I love Sutton. But just the hesitancy of Judy being back. Doug, you didn't even get to say it. You haven't even said it yet. Doug Judy's back. It's not a big movement in your rankings. And so I don't even care if you leave your rankings where they are. It's just, for me, so it would go Pittman, Higgins, Claypool, Sutton. And you have Sutton, Pittman, Higgins, Claypool, and it's not that big of a gap. So, like, this isn't even one where it's like we have to sit here and argue about it forever.
They're all starts to me. So they're all within the wide receiver 3 conversation. I actually do have primary concerns about Sutton and Pittman. More so with Pittman, weirdly enough. Because I think that week 1 with Doug Judy back, I don't know if he's going to get the full complement of snaps. I think that he's just going to kind of be out there working his way back into game shape. It'd be one thing if he had been dealing with the shoulder injury. But when you're dealing with a foot and ankle injury, it's tough to keep up your cardio. It's tough to keep everything up like that because you physically can't walk for a really long time. So maybe he's there and I'm misreading the situation, but when he's back to 100%, that might take away from Courtland Sutton. Or maybe it helps Courtland Sutton. We really don't know with Teddy Bridgewater, who is also banged up, and seeing both these guys healthy at the same time, we really don't know what their correlation to one another is. It could be great for both of them because they're exceptionally hard to cover. The Pittman thing really worried me when Hilton came back 2 weeks ago. Like, it didn't, because I felt like T.Y. Hilton was absolute dust at that point. Then you watch the game, it's like, oh, Carson Wentz is just throwing to T.Y. Hilton and not Michael Pittman anymore. So as soon as Hilton was inactive for the Sunday night game, it's like, oh, fire up some Michael Pittman. This is great. But if Hilton is back this week, I worry, put it that way. Not enough to like really make a stance in my rankings to be like, oh man, Pittman's number 54 this week. I'd still rather play Pittman. I would trust Pittman at least for the week to see what happens. But I do have concerns.
And yeah, I definitely echo your concerns on some of the other, when I'm talking about my podcast, the fact that they went to Hilton, not only the team, but as you mentioned, Carson Wentz, for the fact he wasn't even out there the entire game. Both, they limited his opportunities because his first game back, but he also not actually aggravated because it was a different injury, but kind of got that little tweak and he was held out last week for it. So if he's out there, you're probably not going to see the full complement of snaps, but it's kind of the comparison I drew, Pat, is something I think you were the one that brought it up. And if not, so whatever.
I'll take credit.
The fact it's like, it's Rob Gronkowski. He doesn't see all the snaps, but when Rob Gronkowski's on the field, he's one of the primary targets. And that's what it felt like. And that's where I agree with you with T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah. There's a running back who's like that as well. Now I can't wrap my mind around who it is. Damn it. It's not from this year. It was from like 2 years ago that he only played like 34% of the snaps, but every time he was on the field, he was
on the field.
Yeah. No. This is what happens when you do this year after year. Saquon Barkley. He only plays 8% of the team snaps per year, but he's always touching the ball. There's a big drop-off here, basically at the Claypool. So at number 30, there's Claypool. Then it's Allen Lazard at number 31. I do think he's the best option on the Packers if Adams is out. You might be completely right that this could be a Lamar Miller situation where he's just better as the not full-time guy. That's just easier for him. But the Cardinals have a trash pass defense, so you can throw him. And I would trust Aaron Rodgers to get that done. So Lazard, Manny Sanders, Marvin Jones, Julio Jones, A.J. Green at number 35. That's really been the reason why Arizona's offense, I think, has been so good. A.J. Green has been awesome, which is shocking to me. Corey Davis at number 36, Jacoby Meyer 37, Christian Kirk, Kenny Golladay, and Jamison Crowder. Whether it's Magic Mike or whether it's hello, Joe Flacco, I gotta feel like it's good news for Jamison Crowder.
It is, and I thought you were going to say what my feeling is about this. If it is Joe Flacco, I think I'd play Crowder over Julio Jones, not knowing if Julio Jones is even going to play through the entire game. There was a report, Brandon Funston told me about it. Well, told us about it. We were on the podcast yesterday. You mentioned it. It was the inside the locker room report. I forget who said it, who covers it for The Athletic. But anyway, point being, he said you would be disgusted as a fantasy manager if you saw how much treatment Julio Jones gets on a day-to-day basis inside the locker room for what he's dealing with. It's absurd. It's like his body is completely broken down. And obviously when he's out there, he wanted to be on the field more. You saw him talking on the sidelines, but Julio Jones it's kind of like T.Y. Hilton at this point. What's the difference? Do we know Julio Jones is going to get 50%? Yeah, he had the one play taken away. It could have been a much better week 7 for him. But at the same time, yeah, I think I would play him over Julio Jones if Flacco's at quarterback.
Okay. Number 41, Khalif Raymond for the Detroit Lions, who I played 2 weeks ago in my home keeper league because I was dealing with disastrous with injury problems. And then I dropped him because actually my guys came back last week, and then the guy I was playing had massive injury problems, and he played Khalif Raymond against me. He actually had another good game. He's not bad if you just need a stable of points. Tyler Boyd at number 42. It feels like he's the one who's been phased out of this offense. Yeah. He could definitely be the highest scoring Bengal, but chances are he's the lowest scoring Bengal, so he's got to be down here. Lockett at 43. He's just garbage at this point with Geno. Darius Slayton, Randall Cobb, T.Y. Hilton, Tim Patrick, Cole Beasley, Devontae Parker, Odell Beckham at number 50, Jerry Jeudy at 51, former vice president under Richard Nixon, Spiro Agnew at number 52, Russell Gage, Mecole Hardman, Chenault, KJ Osborne. Now we're into the weeds with Flyers.
Now you're getting desperate at this point. I could see Gage as a little bit more of a desperation. That was his first game back, and he was already clearly the number 2 wide receiver, number 3 option. The Mecole Hardman against the Giants, this is one going to the season. They have James Bradbury. They make the trade the signing of Dory Jackson. They made another trade, and it's like, oh my God, that secondary is worrisome. And I haven't referenced that before in the preseason. It said, on paper, one of the best corner duos in the NFL. On paper. It hasn't turned out that way. Similar to Washington, it hasn't turned out that way. The Giants have been very vulnerable. And if you're looking for the big play, I'm just bringing up to say, if I'm looking in this range of more of the dart throws, Chenault would be a higher ceiling. I would actually put Chenault higher in general, but Hardman would be the dart throw.
Chenault sucks. I don't understand why the internet likes him.
No, because the talent. This is one of those situations. This is talent situation. The talent argument is
he's like the new fucking James Coomer or Jake Coomer.
No. That's you got the wrong one.
Who was the other loser who was on Green Bay?
No, it wasn't on Green Bay. That's the comparison I already made. I already did this. I already took care of it for you, Pat. I said, who's going down in the Fantasy Hall of Fame first, Kristen Michael or Laviska Shenault?
Jeff Janis is who I was thinking about.
Yeah, Jeff Janis for that one game, all the Hail Marys in the one game. But yeah, it's the Kristen Michael situation. But here's the difference. It's like Agnew and Shenault the past 2 games before their bye were very close in snaps, routes, targets, and everything like that. It's just that Agnew has been more of the focal point because it's why not Shenault, why Agnew? It's essentially, you know who they are. It's AJ Green and Christian Kirk, but the worst version because they're on the Jaguars and that value is not as high. But Trevor Lawrence is starting to play better. I still think Shenault has a higher ceiling than Jamal Agnew. Look, you can hate on him all you want, but I'm not saying I would push him that much higher. Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham's just straight out droppable at this point. Drop Beckham, drop Robbie Anderson, drop Allen Robinson. I've been saying to do it for weeks, and if you're still holding on, let him go.
I am waiting for the trade deadline before I get rid of Allen Robinson, because if he gets traded to another team, he's like a top 10 guy again.
That's fair. I'll give you that one.
I'm not playing him, but
where did you even put him? Did you put him in worst place?
He's not in worst place. He's at number 67. He's one spot behind Robbie Anderson. Target king, Robbie Anderson.
Also, unrealized air yards king, Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, can't catch Robbie Anderson.
Well, yeah, and this is so somebody asked about this yesterday when I was tweeting. I was tweeting with Mike Clay and Dave Richard about the unrealized air yards, and somebody was like, "So they're not that predictable?" I said, "No. It's one piece of a giant puzzle, and it still comes down to the quarterback plays. Not every air yard is created equal." Corey Davis and Elijah Moore, while being hurt, were ranking inside the top 10 as of week 5, with Elijah Moore barely being on the field. The quarterback is part of the equation too. So unrealized air yards are great when you're talking about Terry McLaurin might go back to Ryan Fitzpatrick, or who else was in Cortland Sutton was up there for a bunch of weeks. I kept saying buy low on Cortland Sutton. Those are opportunities. But when you're talking about the Jets and then Panthers and all this, that's where the quarterback says, you know what? It's not as important as it might look on paper.
I would completely agree, and I think it's a great way to I think it's more influential for either betting or DraftKings purposes to find a cheap guy, even like an Elijah Moore. Be like, oh, is this consistent that they're constantly taking deep shots down the field? Like, it's almost the same thing with Rager and Quez Watkins. Like, who has the higher ADOT? Who is seeing the unrealized air yards on this team? Because if they hit, they're gonna hit big. It's like Ruggs, for example. Like, his unrealized air yards must be through the roof, although he's catching more of them this year. But just when he gets
Actually,
targeted,
higher last year.
Was it higher last year?
He was top 8, maybe even top 5 last year. And that was part of the thing is Derek Carr and him weren't on the same page. And he was playing outside primarily as the number 1. So again, that's where last year you say, yes, you would hope it would click, but it's not. It's actually clicking this year. And his unrealized air yards have dropped because they're connecting more.
What I would say is the reason that it's more valuable in something like DraftKings is you can get paid out when it hits, and you can get paid out big if you're right. All it really happens in your season-long lineup is you might win your matchup that week. Chances are you're going to lose your matchup that week if you play that sort of guy on the bad team with the air yard. So, like you said, it's a part of a puzzle, and it can predict future booms in good spots, but it's not predictable by any means, like in terms of a consistent basis.
It's a good window for looking for buy lows, but it's also doesn't mean every single player on that list is a buy low too.
Tight ends for week number. This is a tough one because Andrews and Waller are both on buy, and the island of Foster Moreau. So even if you had a backup coming in.
Remember at the preseason when people tried to play this year, it's going to be better at tight end again. I know we've said it for 4 straight years, but it's happening this year.
I actually feel like it is better at tight end this year. Like
I just feel like the top group's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, like there's Kelsey's number 1, Pitts is number 2, Gesicki's number 3 because Gesicki has been great since every game that Tua plays. Gesicki's been awesome. Hawkinson number 4, Goddard, Ricky Seals-Jones, Noah Fant, Dalton Schultz, Tyler Higbee, and Zach Ertz. You don't like Dalton Schultz?
No, I don't like Noah Fant. Noah Fant.
Oh, come on.
Because he's not.
Noah Fant's fine.
Completely overrated. No, completely overrated. And here's why. Because you have Judy back in. If there was no Judy, I'd say fine, keep him there. But Noah Fant is one of the most roller coaster tight ends in all of football. He is exceptionally talented as a player, but it just comes down to he's already a roller coaster and Judy's not even out there yet. So if Judy's back, look at Noah Fant just last week. Noah Fant had another bad game because Noah Fant just isn't guaranteed to see volume, whether Teddy's throwing 40 times or 20 times. He's honestly, he's touchdown / big game reliant. I know that sounds weird to say, but I think everybody understands what I'm trying to say. I would play Schultz over him, even though we might get Michael Gallup back. The problem is because of this week, you can't push him down that much further.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you were just about to describe about Noah Fant, you can say the exact same thing about Tyler Higbee.
About Higbee, you're right. So that's why I kind of almost hesitated right there. You know, if Andrews is in there, so going forward, if we don't have Waller, Andrews, and everybody, those two being out, he's barely even top 10 for me. But I say that just because it was more for what I brought up in the waiver column is to sell high if people still see Noah Fant as like top 5. Look at all the potential he has. I just think it's going to get even worse.
Okay, so I'll move him that one spot. I'll move Dalton Schultz up to number 7, Noah Fant to number 8, Higbee, Ertz. I think Ertz is a touchdown threat in this game, and you're right. You should sell high on Ertz after what we saw. He's 4th in the pecking order, which is not bad on the Cardinals. There's worse teams to be the number 4 on, but that's just the way it's going to go, and there's going to be situations. Well, I guess Kirk and Rondell Moore kind of trade back between who's like number 3. It's not like one's number 3 and one's number 4. It's one's number 3 and the other one isn't used, is essentially how that offense ends up going.
I think Kirk trades a little bit more with AJ Green than he does with Rondell Moore. Rondell Moore's been nothing since week 2.
I would say AJ Green just very clearly the number 2.
No, then Kirk is, for me, Kirk then is just clearly the number 3. Rondell Moore was 5th last week. He's been nothing since week 2.
I got CJ Secret of the Uzma at number 11. It just seems like another team he can beat up on. The issue with him is like he is the classic. He's going to have 0 points this week, tight end, isn't he?
Oh, he's 1st or 30th. There's no question about it. There's no in between.
I'm actually serious about Freiermuth. That I think that he's going to have a pretty substantial role in this offense moving forward. He has taken Juju's spot of guy that just lingers near the line of scrimmage and catches passes. It's not going to be 5 for 161 and 2 touchdowns, but it's going to be a lot of like 7 for 43, and hopefully he scores a touchdown.
Yeah. It really comes down to is you're going to get to another name that you haven't brought up yet. I don't disagree with that. There's just another name that I was going to bring up as a sidebar.
Bob Tunyon?
No, Hunter Henry. If no Jono Smith, I would play Hunter Henry in front of Zach Ertz. I put Hunter Henry at 10. If there, I might even play him over Tyler Higbee. If no Jono, the Jono situation, we're gonna have to wait and see. But if there's no Jono, Henry has kind of been the more consistent option.
I gotta throw this out here. I really think the Patriots are terrible.
What does that say about the Jets?
Well, I mean, we know how terrible they are, but like the one, like you mentioned earlier, the one thing you can really do against the Chargers is run all over them. We've seen that. And historically, they've been really good against tight ends. And so far this season, they've been shutting down wide receiver ones for the most, or tight end ones for the most part. Maybe that is a part of the field where they are vulnerable in between, over the middle, in between the hashes, up the seams. But I don't know. I just don't see a ton of upside from Hunter Henry here. Like, he kind of has to score a touchdown, or
hey.
I'd rather take my chances with Robert Tonyan with no Devontae Adams around as guy who scores a touchdown.
No, Devontae, I'm sure. Tonyan has been nothing until last week. It legitimately was catching one or two passes. I was just going to say, speaking of the Patriots, while we're doing this show, a report, as I was mentioned before, D'Angelo Williams knows what the hell he's talking about, from Mike Reese, that the Stevenson situation could be a week-to-week, whether he's inactive or active. Missed a blocking assignment in week 6. The team is not happy with that. There you go. He knows what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, but even if you keep him, what use does he have?
No. I wasn't saying that. I was just saying that, like, if he's active, he might be the number 2 that week. That was just the Belichick not trusting Brandon Bolden thing. That's not so much Stevenson.
It's Uzma, Freiermuth, Tonyan, Tarzan Dan Arnold, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, OJ Howard, T.Y. Hilton coming back.
Cole Kmet, a little bit higher.
Cole Kmet sucks, man. He's so bad.
No, but he's the only one getting volume in that offense.
It is, and like, but his volume is like, it's still tight end 2 type stuff, and that's like his upside.
Okay. I don't really have
like he had basically the best game he could have last week. What do you have, like 5 for 40?
Yeah, okay, I'm not disagreeing that much. Let's go to quarterbacks.
All right, let's go to quarterbacks. You got a problem with Kyler at number 1?
Yeah, it just goes back to what we said earlier. It's just he's not running. He doesn't want to run. I talked in the preseason, I think it was with Meany or somebody. I was like, I would smash the under in his rushing prop. I wasn't expecting it to be this bad. And it's not just the not averaging. He's averaging 2.9 yards per carry because he doesn't want to run, and he's not running like he used to, where it's in the middle of the field. It's taking these open seams because he doesn't need to anymore.
No, but hold on. A lot of it has to do, because I'm not super concerned about his lack of yardage. It's now he's not scoring the goal line touchdowns that he had been scoring for each of the past 2 years, and then even at the beginning of the year. But a lot of that has to do with they're just playing really uncompetitive games right now. Like, they're blowing everyone out. And when the game is on the line and the game is a little bit closer and they need to score, you're going to see Kyler run a little bit more. Maybe this isn't the week, but I do think sneakily Green Bay kind of keeps up with them.
Maybe, and I'm not knocking him down that far. Like, this week, I would have him 3rd, but I would honestly have a 4th. I know it's a bad matchup because of how good the Saints defense has been, especially since they got Lattimore back. But if you just told me, who do I trust over Kyler Murray now at this point? I know Patrick Mahomes is coming off the 7-point game and Murray isn't, but there's 4 quarterbacks. One of them's on the bye. I would trust Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Tom Brady before Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a discussion really for anyone. If you have Kyler Murray, you're playing him, I would think. So, yeah, Murray, Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, Brady. I think that's a pretty clear top 5. Prescott, Herbert, Burrow, Stafford, Cousins. I would go through 10, then into Wentz, he's throwing the ball downfield again. Why not? Against Tennessee, let's go. Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill, Trevi Lawrence, Danny Thumbs, the Goof, Mac Jones, Jameis Winston.
Tua at 17.
Tua at 17.
I don't care that it's the Bills. That Tua is going to Tua is going to continue to throw this game. This team has become pass happy, and against the Bills in what should be a pass happy game, as we just saw last week against the Falcons, which we didn't expect to be a pass happy game for Miami. Even if he turns the ball over, he's turning to pass happy Tua, and you have Parker back in the ranks. There's no way I'm playing Jared Goff over Tua at this point. I'm not.
I'll play the Goof. I'll take that bet this week. You got me last.
Is that another one?
Yeah, it was last week or the week before. You had Burrow versus, I think it was Heineke. It was smart decision on your part. But I'll take the Goof. I'll take the Goof over Tua this week.
Okay.
stick by that one. Yeah, there's really no way I'd be playing Tua here. I think the cutoff is actually Ryan Tannehill. I think the top 14 are all really pretty good starts. Then Lawrence and Daniel Jones kind of in the middle, like these upside down.
In their own group?
Yeah, they're in their own little mini tier, and then it's everyone else.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. Yeah. Tua would start that mess of quarterbacks that I don't want to start. But yeah, I don't really want to start any of those guys.
I'm feeling good about our defense moving forward here. So I got some good Ds for you this week. You ready for this? Because I cashed big with the Giants last week. They were the.
And now that's going to be your number one comment in your things of what you just said. People are going to clip that out and paraphrase that.
What?
You got some good Ds for me.
I do. Got
that's going to be.
I
I know your listeners.
And you know what I'm like. You know I'm always dropping my innuendos. I got the Rams at number 1, Bills at number 2, Eagles at number 3. I think rate out really well against the Goof. So Goof throws interceptions, Goof fumbles the ball, Eagles return it for 6, and more Goof down the field. But bad offensive line versus a really good defensive line in terms of pass rush. So I have the Eagles rated very highly. The 49ers against Chicago rate out really well, as do the Bears against the 49ers, who I have at number 9. The Cowboys and Vikings, it's tough to play the Vikings, only because the Cowboys' offensive line is so good, but the pass rush for the Vikings has been really good. So overall, Rams, Bills, Eagles, 49ers, Bengals against the Jets, Bucks against New Orleans, the football team against Denver, the Browns against Pittsburgh, Bears, Cowboys. Then you can go Panthers, Steelers, Cards, Chargers, Broncos, Les Titans, Chiefs, Giants against Kansas City, because all they do is turn the ball over. Wouldn't really bank on that one, though. But the defense has been a little bit better recently. I was stunned at how much pressure the Titans got against Kansas City last week. That blew my mind.
I think it's a testament to it's not all Mahomes' fault and how terrible that offensive line has been this year. Is that yes, Mahomes been reckless, and it's you get people talking about there the interception regression that there's interceptions he should have had that they're just coming back, but it's also the fumble was because he had to take off running on a play that shouldn't have been. Some of the interceptions are because he's rolling out and he's trying to do Patrick Mahomes things, but it's because the offensive line is just doing nothing for him. So that's why your Giants play of a sneaky one at 18, because they are getting, you just saw it last week, the pressure they got on Sam Darnold all day long. And then Pedro Walker, when he came in, you might get Patrick Mahomes throwing 350 and 3 touchdowns, but it might include an interception and a fumble or, 2 turnovers or something like that and a couple sacks.
Yeah, I think it's just easier to play the Bears. I should put the Vikings in this. Like, where's Dallas's offensive line rate out? I think it's completely healthy now, though. So that becomes a more difficult situation. Dallas's O-line already 5th best in pass blocking. So it's really tough to see them doing much of anything. Although, like I said, the Vikings D has been pretty good. So that's a tough one. But the Bears against the 49ers, I don't think many people will play. But, I guess it really hinges on the health of Trent Williams on the 49ers offensive lineman. They couldn't block last weekend either.
No, it's just Jimmy Garoppolo's also not playing well, period, anyway. So.
Yeah. And I don't know if people will play the Browns against Pittsburgh. I feel like logically they should. A great D-line versus a bad O-line and Ben Roethlisberger. But I don't know. I don't know what their ownership percentage is right now.
There was, the week 8, they didn't qualify as under 60% on Yahoo, so they weren't even a streaming option. I remember checking; they're not even there.
Well, everyone's going to go stream the Bengals this week against the Jets. Like that's the most logical play. That's why I have them at number 5. But I do think that the Eagles possess higher upside in this game against the Lions.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I'm at on defenses this week. Anyway. I'll let you get out of here, sir. Jake Ciely at AllInKid on Twitter, theathletic.com. Rankings come out tonight at midnight.
12:01 Eastern on Wednesdays. There you go.
All right. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at ThePME on Twitter. Rankings in the description. Listeners League link in the description. Tons of stuff down in the description. Smash the like, sub to the YouTube channel, and the audio podcast on the way out. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!